Okay, so this is it's a relatively unknown cause of the American Civil War, but it is important because it speaks to the ideas of the people at the time and their beliefs, and to the lengths that they would go. So these are the Gag Rule debates. The Gag Rule was basically a rule in the House of Representatives that any member of the House of Representatives was not allowed to discuss slavery. And the gag rule was in effect from 1836 to 1844. Huh. That's basically the exact same time period of when Texas became independent, but the United States wasn't letting them join the United States because they would have had slaves. Do you have a light bulb over your head? Because I do. Okay, so from 1831 to 1836, William Lloyd Garrison and the American Anti-Slavery Society initiated a campaign to petition Congress in favor of ending slavery in the District of Columbia and all federal territories. Hundreds of thousands of petitions were sent, with the number reaching a peak in 1835. In reaction to the mountain of petitions sent in by Garrison and his followers, the House of Representatives passed the Pinckney resolutions, the official names, on May 26, 1836. The third part of the Pinckney resolutions, known from the beginning as the Gag Rule, said, and this is the Gag Rule: all petitions, memorials, resolutions, propositions, or papers relating in any way or to any extent whatsoever to the subject of slavery or the abolition of slavery shall, without being either printed or referred, be laid on the table, and that no further action whatsoever shall be had thereon. Basically, nothing that touched on the topic of slavery would be talked about in the House of Representatives, period, end of story. Former President John Quincy Adams, who was elected in the House of Representatives in 1830, became an early and central figure in the opposition to the gag rules. He argued that they were a direct violation of the First Amendment right to petition the government for a redress of grievances. A majority of Northern Whigs joined the opposition. Rather than to suppress anti-slavery petitions, however, the gag rule only served to offend Americans from northern states and dramatically increase the number of petitions. It's kind of odd. It's like if you're told don't put your hand in the cookie jar, you kind of want to put your hand in the cookie jar even more than you did before. In the 1920s, when we had the alcohol ban, where you weren't allowed to drink. When we made a constitutional amendment saying no alcohol, I'm simplifying here, if you look at the studies, people drank more alcohol because they weren't allowed to, so it became cool. It's like teenagers. You tell a teenager you can't do something, the teenager is going to do it to find out why they can't do it. Some people are hard-headed, and they just have to figure it out the hard way. The gag rule said, don't talk about slavery. So people were like, I'm not supposed to talk about... Well, I didn't want to, but now I do, because you put it in my head. Since the original gag was a resolution, not an actual standing House rule, it had to be renewed every session, and Adams' faction often gained the floor before the gag rule could be imposed. Basically what it's saying is that you actually had to have somebody get up there and say, we're going to renew the gag rule. And John Quincy Adams and all his friends, anytime they knew somebody was about to get up there and talk about renewing the gag rule every single year, they would find an excuse to get up there and talk, and they would say just nonsense. It's called filibustering, when you just talk for the sake of talking to delay, and then eventually people get bored and they want to go home, and then the law didn't get passed or the rule didn't happen. It's called filibustering. However, in January of 1840, the House of Representatives passed the 21st Rule, which prohibited even the reception of anti-slavery petitions and was a standing House rule. So John Quincy Adams and his buddies would no longer be able to filibuster this. It's a standing House rule, meaning they don't have to renew it. It's just for forever on, gag rule. And if you mail in a petition, if we think it has anything to do with talking about slavery, it's literally not going to even be accepted. They won't open it. They just, oh, here's mail. Oh, no. Then the pro-petition forces focused on trying to revoke this new standing rule. They raised serious doubts about the 21st rule's constitutionality, and it had less support than the original Pinckney gag, passing only by 114 to 108, so it wasn't exactly the most popular thing. While the gag was in place, Adams' superior talent in using and abusing parliamentary rules and skill in baiting his enemies into making mistakes enabled him to evade the rule and debate the slavery issues. Basically, John Quincy Adams used the fact that ever since he was a tiny wee little munchkin, his dad had sent him all over the world, either traveling with him or other dignitaries. He knew more about politics than basically anybody. He had actually been president. Like, the dude knew everything about politics. And so he's like, I know you don't know as much as I do, so there's this rule. I'm going to find every possible workaround and get you to talk about it. And once you talk about it, why can't I? John Quincy Adams. The gag rule was finally removed on December 3rd, 1844, by a strong sectional vote, meaning basically all the Northerners, of 108 to 80. All of the Northern and 4 Southern Whigs voted to repeal, means get rid of the rule, along with 55 of the 71 Northern Democrats. So, this is the gag rule. I hope you're learning, and I hope you're having fun.